Hi, I'm Leo Finelli, and you're listening to Generation Change. Our guest this month is Shoshanna Hemley. She is a rising junior and political science major at Williams College. While she grew up mostly in Iowa, she has lived in Manila, Singapore, and France, all of which were experiences that greatly impacted her passion for global justice. Outside of the classroom, Shoshi runs her college mock trial team. She is on the board of her student-run theater group and has performed in multiple shows every semester. She is part of an a cappella group. She is on her elected student government, and she's a tour guide. She has always been passionate about social justice, and she hopes to go to law school after graduating from Williams. Shoshi and I talked about growing up around the world, her study on the impact of COVID-19 in federal prisons, and her plans for her future political career. So, what is your name and where are you from?
My name is Shoshanna Hemley, and I am from Iowa City, Iowa.
Isn't that where the University of Iowa is?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, it's so nice to have you on the podcast. It's such an honor to finally meet you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
So, what is your earliest memory of hearing about a political issue or like a major news story on the news?
Yeah, so being in a university town in Iowa, it started pretty early, I think, actually, with the election of Obama, his first election back in 2008. And actually, probably before that, like 2007, when they were all still running. And so, like, that was my first exposure, really. And yeah, I've kind of been exposed since, especially since being from Iowa, we have the caucuses.
You know, funny you should mention that because I had heard about them for a long time. And I remember last election cycle, pre-pandemic 2020, we were listening to a news report. Me and my mom, we were listening to a news report on the radio about the Iowa caucuses. And they were describing it like each candidate has a place in the gym and they do several rounds of people running to the place in the gym of the candidate they want. And I was like, they're using elementary school field day to decide who gets the Democratic nomination for president. And it all just sounded so fun.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. It's quite funny. But yeah, that's exactly how it is.
So let's drop the pin and let's talk more about Iowa and Iowa City. What is it like growing up there? What is your perspective on that place?
Well, it's really interesting because it's kind of a bubble. Iowa used to be a swing state, but now it's for the last two election cycles and the midterms as well. It's just been red for, however many years. And so that's like a big change, but also Iowa City is blue and consistently has stayed blue. So it's a bubble being in a university town, and it's still a very white area, but it's got its charms and its pockets of like different types of diversity. So like it's quite a queer area, for example. But yeah, it's interesting because it felt like I was very exposed to activism and politics and really being involved, and it felt like a really liberal area, but at the same time it was still Iowa, so I did have to like deal with a lot of extremists on the right growing up and like discrimination here and there as a woman of color at my high school.
And you also lived in the Philippines and in France. What were those experiences like?
Yeah, that was really different. And I also lived in Singapore, so I lived in France only for like 9 months when I was a kid. That was really fun and idyllic. Long before I got involved in politics, I was only 7. And same goes for the Philippines. I was only 5/6. I lived there for a year. And those were really cool. I loved both. Very different experiences. I lived in a small village in the south of France, and then Manila, which is one of the most overpopulated cities in the world. So those were very polar opposites, but that was young, far, like in my childhood. But then Singapore, I lived there from the ages of 12 or from ages of 11 to 15. And that was like once I had started getting involved in politics. So that was a really unique experience because like protesting is illegal in Singapore and there's no freedom of speech there really. As well as it was quite disconnected from the US and I was still tied to US politics, but I was going to an American school. So that was interesting and unique because, for example, election day and the election results came in during our school day since we were 12 hours ahead. So there were people like wearing MAGA hats to school, and it was very contentious and there was a lot of tension in the air on election day. I remember that. And then after the Parkland shooting, I held a sit-in, which had a lot of people show up, but also had some people who like threatened to like call the police on me for protesting.
And while you were in high school, you did theater. Is theater and acting something you're interested in?
I love theater and acting. I do a ton of it. I was in a lot of shows both throughout high school and now still in college. I don't plan on pursuing it. I plan on pursuing law and government. But in the past 2 years at school, I've done 10 shows and I really do love it. And I think that public speaking and confidence, which are two very necessary skills in law and politics, I can accredit those skills to all of the theater that I've done.
And I'm just noticing this now, but I believe that doodle on your shirt is supposed to be Stephen Sondheim.
Yes, it is. You're right. It's a shirt I just got. It says there are giants in the sky. It's Stephen Sondheim. Yeah.
Asked a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he actually went to the same school that I go to, Williams College.
Wow. Is this shirt you're wearing something from your college?
No, actually, I'm currently in DC for my summer internship, and I went to go see Sweeney Todd at a regional theater on Friday. So I got this shirt because they were selling it there.
You wish you could see the current Broadway revival with Josh Groban and Anna Lee Ashford?
Yes, I would love to watch that. I did get to see the Broadway revival of Into the Woods by Sondheim, but I would still love to see the Broadway revival of Sweeney Todd.
Hope it's still playing long enough for you to go see it. Another interesting thing that happened while you were in high school was you got to meet Greta Thunberg. How'd you get to meet her?
Yeah, so I did a lot of activism through high school. My two main focal points were climate activism and gun control activism. And so with the climate activism, I was a part of the school strikers where we striked every Friday for 1 to 2 periods of class, and we would go to either the school district building or other places, and we would strike and we would, demand solar panels. We would demand a climate curriculum, a climate emergency. And so they added AP environmental science, for example, because of our movement. The city of Iowa City declared a climate emergency, and the Iowa City Community School District added a climate plan. And so because of our success and because of what we did, Greta Thunberg noticed us on Twitter, and she was doing a national tour of climate strikers. And so she came to one of our climate strikes, and we ended up holding a rally with 3,000 people. And since I was one of the original climate strikers, I got to spend the day with her. We had lunch. We walked to and from the rally together, and then we gave the rally together. And I was able to give a speech in front of 3,000 people and Greta Thunberg, which was really awesome.
Well, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there's this really brilliant group of kids who have been striking in my community for the past few years. And in 2019, I think around that same time, Greta came to strike with them, and I wasn't there, but some of the people who were there with her that day, one of them has come on my podcast before. Her name's Chrissy Oliver May. She was on my podcast a couple years ago, and we talked about Greta's participation in the strike in my hometown of Charlotte.
That's really cool, yeah.
You also volunteered for the Kamala Harris campaign in high school. This was when she was running for president before she dropped out of the race and eventually got picked to become vice president. So what was working on her campaign like?
It was really amazing. The people were really, really great. I think I've become a lot more left than I was in high school. So I don't know if current day me would necessarily still volunteer for her presidential run, but I still do believe in electing women of color and ignoring all of these conversations that we have about electability, because she was able to get into the White House as a woman of color, and so many people doubted that, and she might not have been president, but she was still there. So I think it's very possible, and I think that that is something I deal with as a woman of color and as someone who wants to be in government and be in the political sphere. Get really, really passionate and really quite upset about the whole conversation of, oh, well, can we elect a woman of color? Because I just think it's total crap to be asking that question in the first place. And so it was actually very parallel, because once she dropped out, or a couple months after, I started running for my own student body president in high school, and I lost. I had actually another group of kids ran a smear campaign against me. They called my campaign an act of terrorism, and among other things, and basically like harassed me online. And so I felt, the question of electability and the question for running for politics or a political office as a woman of color, even on the high school sphere, I felt that very personally. And so I was really lucky to have been able to have volunteered for that campaign, because I really enjoyed the people who I worked with. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. And, it was truly one of the most supportive kind of atmospheres I've ever been in. They actually all showed up to the climate rally with Greta Thunberg, yelling my name in the crowd with signs. And it was just so heartwarming. They were all, so proud of me. And it was just really cool to see. So it was a really great environment.
But what I don't understand is what kind of high schoolers would take a student body president election seriously enough to smear the opposition? Were they just looking for someone to bully and an excuse to bully them? Do you think that's what it was?
That partially, but also I think being a confident and opinionated, outspoken woman of color who's left and, passionate about helping people and passionate about leadership, that's very threatening and intimidating to people. And they didn't want to see me as student body president. And so they made sure that even though hypothetically in some realm I could have won, they wanted to dissuade people from that. And so I think it was a mix of wanting to bully people, but also they didn't agree with my political opinions and basically my existence.
I can imagine how that feels, though I know that I'll never really understand.
Yeah, but that's what I mean about Iowa, where living in Iowa City was very interesting, because there were instances like that. But at the same time, for example, I was on the student newspaper, and since we're from Iowa City, where the Hawkeyes are, our mascot in our newspaper was called the Little Hawk. But some kids would deface it and call it the Liberal Hawk. And someone started an Instagram account called The Liberal Hawk is Big Gay. So it's weird how they were both this reputation for being liberal, but then also all the people who retaliated against that.
And so after finishing high school in summer 2021, we're moving out of high school into the summer before you went to college. And that summer, you did a research project on COVID-19 deaths in federal prisons. What did this research consist of, and what did you find out?
Yeah, it was amazing research. I was working under a defense attorney at the University of Iowa Law Clinic, and she was doing amazing work. So I was basically going in and looking at case files and court documents, as well as just death dates, and filling in all this information of every single, I think it was around 2,000 people who had died in federal prisons, who died of COVID, but had asked for compassionate release because COVID-19 is not controllable in federal prisons. And these were people with underlying diseases who knew that if they caught it at that point, they would have died. And they did. And they were denied compassionate release. They were forced to stay in the prisons, and they died. So this research actually ended up going to Congress, and the attorney who I was working under ended up testifying to Congress. It was very, very impactful work there. And reading those case files and those documents were quite intense and quite tough, because I was reading about, people's lives and how they knew that they would die and how they ended up dying. And even when they were sick in the hospital, they were just being asked if they could get compassionate release so that they could die a dignified death at home, and they were still denied that.
And then that fall, you went to Williams College. Where is Williams College? What's it like?
Yeah, Williams College is in Western Massachusetts. It's closer to the Vermont and New York border than any other town in Massachusetts. It's a very western north corner. And it's a small liberal arts college, only 2,200 students in a very small town, very rural. We're in the Berkshire Mountains. It's gorgeous, beautiful nature. And I really enjoyed it. It's a small liberal arts college, #1 in the country. And it's just a really close, tight-knit community with a bunch of people who are super dedicated to learning and helping people and achieving amazing things.
And you're on the mock trial team at your college. What is that like?
Yeah, so I'm actually the upcoming co-president of our mock trial team. I was vice president this year. And this will be my 5th year, I believe. No, wait, 6th year in mock trial. And I absolutely love it. It is truly one of my favorite things because I think it's a mix of theater and debate, and it's not too much like either. It's really its own thing. And I'm very competitive, but I'm not athletic, so I don't get to release my competitiveness in many spheres or places besides mock trial. And the adrenaline rush of winning a case and of winning an objection battle is like no other for me. I really enjoy it. And it definitely solidifies the fact that I want to be a lawyer and want to do litigation.
If you're talking about it being dramatic, I think Aaron Sorkin would love to go see like a college mock trial. It sounds very Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, it's very, very dramatic.
Rapid fire talk.
Yeah, college mock trial attorneys love to be hams.
Yeah. Sounds kind of fun. Might have to check it more out. Are there any videos on YouTube of you doing this?
Yeah, I actually in high school was in the national championship round in 2021. So you can watch my national championship round. It was on Zoom because it was 2021, but you can see my closing arguments, yeah, from the national high school mock trial competition in 2021.
So this summer, you are in Washington, D.C. doing an internship at the Department of Commerce. What is that like?
Well, I just finished my first week this week, and it's pretty cool so far. I feel very official. I get my own badge. I have to walk through security. I have to wear a suit every day. I'm in my little cubicle with my work laptop. So it's really cool. Just like it feels like a big girl job and like I'm doing real things. And I'm working actually specifically with the Minority Business Development Agency, which is really cool because I'm an intern there and I just feel like it's such a new agency. They were just signed to be a permanent federal agency back in 2021. So they're the newest federal agency, at least at the DOC. So there's just so much potential and so many ways to like help build this new agency really from the ground up. And they're doing so many amazing things. It's the only federal agency dedicated to promoting minority businesses. So it's just really cool work, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Do you take the DC Metro to work? I've ridden on the DC Metro several times.
I also have been riding the DC Metro, but not to work, actually. I live in Foggy Bottom, and so I'm very near. I actually just walk to work. It's very near. It's only 20 minutes.
And when you walk to work past, well, everything, what does that make you feel?
It's very energizing. Even though I do it every day, it actually makes me slightly emotional because it really solidifies for me the fact that I want to be here and that I want to live here and do big things and, help make this country a better place. And yeah, the fact that I'm in the center of it all and that I'm in a position to be so lucky and so privileged.
You're also doing another internship with something called the Impact Program. What is that?
So that is a program for Filipino American youth who are pursuing public service. It's with the Filipino Embassy and the US Asia Institute. And that's really cool as well because, you know, we lack minorities in public service and government in general here, but especially Filipino Americans. I think we're the third or fourth largest growing group of immigrants in the US. And so we have a big population and it's rising rapidly. I mean, the rise of Asian American voters that are becoming eligible voters has increased so much in just the last decade. And yet that representation is still not being seen at the exact same accelerated rate. And so I think it's really important that Filipino American youth are being involved in the government. And I'm really excited to be a part of that generation that can be that change.
And what do you hope to do next?
So I'm going into my junior year at Williams. And after that, or currently this year, I'm going to apply for some junior deferral programs for law school. And if I don't get into those, then I'll just apply regular my senior year. And then I hope to defer 1 to 2 years to travel, get some real work experience, probably will apply for like a critical language scholarship and or want to maybe spend a year on the Hill back here in DC. And then I plan to go to law school. I want to practice law and maybe go back home and run for a local office or something.
In Iowa?
Yes.
Wow. And what would you say are your greatest talents or strengths as a person?
Well, that depends. I mean, if we're just thinking personality wise, I think my loyalty and, you know, like if you are my friend and if I find you someone close, then I will fight for you. And also just my passion, whether or not you are my friend, I care about people. And like, I think my empathy and my passion, you know, really shows and is why I want to do this work and why I'm interested in social justice. But if we're just talking skills or talents, then probably like public speaking and theater. But that's a very different side than, you know, loyalty and passion.
It was so nice talking to you today, Shoshanna. I really enjoyed it. I loved hearing from you. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. I loved all your interesting stories.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored.
Welcome. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good day.
If there is a common thread throughout the stories that Shoshi shared on this episode, it is resilience. Shoshi has lived around the world, bouncing across continents, experiencing different perspectives, and gaining a new view of the political events in the United States by looking at them from the outside. She has spoken in front of crowds many times and has never been afraid to speak her mind. She faced bullying during her high school student election, and if she runs for political office, she will probably face a lot of the same bullying, but she'll get a lot more support because she's a caring and resilient young adult who isn't easily brought down, and her determination, tenacity, and empathy should be an inspiration to us all. You can follow Shoshi on Instagram at shoshi.hemley and find out more about the Impact Program for Filipino Americans at usasiainstitute.org. Generation Change with Leo Finelli is hosted by Leo Finelli, executive produced by Julie Finelli, and edited by Nick and Leo Finelli. Our original music was composed and performed by Leo Finelli. Thank you so much for listening.